The man everyone loves is nearing the last days of his life. He has conquered TV and movies and making himself a household name, but he is struggling with his addiction in a very fast-paced lifestyle. For the last 30 years, he has been making people laugh from generation to generation. This is the king of the 90s, Chris Farley, in his last few months with us. When we catch up with Farley, he is just making his last appearance on SNL. This is a moment in time where the world will really see Chris for the last time. The year is 1997, October of that year. Chris has a little over a month he will still be with us, but elements in his life are falling apart around him at a very fast pace. Chris's last time on SNL is short-lived. It's obvious he is not sharp with his lines. He's out of breath. He's covered in sweat in every scene. In a way, the whole show that night is somewhat sad because the jokes revolve around Farley and his eating habits, his weight, and his substance abuse. And can he still even be the Farley he was of the early 90s? Although Chris has had a very productive year, some say he has recorded over 80 to 90% of the movie Shrek, and it looks like it's a wrap. But there are whispers still that Chris is having mood swings on set, disappearing, hanging around the wrong people. The people that love Chris are saddened by this. At this point, no one can stop what is coming. It's no secret that Farley is unhappy to people around him. People to this day will even say that he would randomly call them, wanting to get together, wanting to talk, showing signs of being lonely, seeking help, but not saying what for. Chris's last movie, Beverly Hills Ninja, would be a complete flop in theaters. Even Chris would admit that he was devastated by the role. But still, nonetheless, 97 was still a very big positive year for Chris, career-wise. He would work on 2 more films, Almost Heroes and Dirty Work. These films would come out the following year, in 98, after his death. Almost Heroes being a full-length movie starring Chris, and then Dirty Work, he would make a few small cameos. It's said that while on set of Dirty Work, Chris was not in the best of moods. But the biggest one of all that no one saw coming, even Chris, would be the role of Shrek. If Chris would have lived to finish this movie and see what it had become, who knows how this would have made an impact on Chris and how he would have thought about his future more. It might have been the shift that he just needed to see. When Chris would walk off the stage that night on Saturday Night Live in October of 97, that would be the last time the world would see Chris Farley. And that would be the last time a lot of his friends would see him, hug him, and talk to him face to face. From this point on, Chris will dive right back into his lifestyle of drugs, beautiful women, and partying, and abusing food. In Chris's life, he will seek treatment 17 times for weight problems and his drug addiction. One thing that we see in Farley a lot in interviews and just with him being honest and real in conversations, Chris is a huge supporter of his family. And not only that, it's no secret that Chris loves his father and that his father is a huge influence in his career, his personal life, and just who he is as overall man. Chris would always say the one person he wanted to make laugh more than anybody was his father. With Chris's drug abuse, it is obvious that he is ashamed of it, and even claiming to be sober of that October when he would host SNL. But it's quite obvious, before and during while Chris is on set of SNL, he is still using, and his health is scaring everyone. Chris would finally return to his home in Chicago on December 11th. The next 6 days of Chris's life would be unbelievable. When Chris would first return home in Chicago, it's said that Chris would visit friends, going from bar to bar late at night, but building up a very fast pace that would lead up into the last few days of his life that were full of debauchery and substance abuse. But the last 48 hours of Chris's life would be even harder. Chris would take a shift from visiting his friends to visiting his friends that did drugs, sold drugs, and that more than likely were not the right people to be around him. At this rate, Chris is going downhill very fast. But going into December 17th, this is when things would rapidly change. Chris has been binging for 6 days now, drinking, eating, sleeping here and there, no particular schedule, massive amounts of drugs, and he is wore down. Now with December 17th being Chris's last full day alive, it would somewhat favor the day before, December 16th. Chris would wake up late in the day, have a call girl come over. She said that Chris was smoking marijuana and drinking heavily, but also that Chris was irritated that she did not bring her own drugs to share. She would also say that Chris was acting manic, going from room to room in his apartment, yelling and laughing. The last day of Chris's life are surrounded in many different stories, from who, where, when, and when they saw Chris. But on December 17th, an exotic dancer that goes by the name Heidi will be the last person to see and spend time with Chris. Heidi will link up with Chris around 11 a.m. that morning at a party. They will spend the day together and eventually go to Heidi's apartment later that day. Chris will call his dealer to bring them drugs. When the dealer is at the apartment, he will snap a photo of Chris and Heidi. Pictures will later surface of Chris sitting at Heidi's table doing drugs. While Chris is sitting at Heidi's table, Heidi said that Chris would take a hit of his drug, throw the chair back with his arms in the air, and the chair, with the amount of force that Chris threw back, it would go into the wall, showing these marks. While at Heidi's apartment, the two will also try to have relations, but with no success. Chris has been up for 4 days, drinking and doing drugs. By 11 p.m. that night, the two would end up back at Chris's apartment, which was the 60th floor on the John Hancock building in downtown Chicago. Heidi would say she was getting very angry with Chris because he would not pay her the money she was owed to be with him all day. Chris would remark to Heidi several times, "A friend of mine is supposed to pay you." It's late in the night. Heidi has been with Chris all day. They would once again try to have relations at Chris's apartment, but still the same result as before. Heidi would continue taking pictures of Chris, even at his apartment. She would take one of the last photos of Chris, conscious and standing on the phone, just hours before he would pass away. Heidi will say later in an interview about that night that she would ask Chris to stop doing so many drugs, to slow down. Chris would just say he loves it. Heidi said that Chris was walking around the apartment, making phone calls, beating his chest, and saying that he just wanted to have one last fun time before his new movie came out, and he was forced to be clean. It is now around 3 a.m. that night. Chris was heavily induced with drugs at this point, and now Chris and Heidi have been together for almost 17 hours straight now. With no sleep, no rest, they have been doing drugs and drinking. At this point around 3 a.m., Heidi is leaving. She said that Chris would stumble around the apartment, fall down 10 feet from the door, and pass out. She said that she could hear him breathing, roughly, but Chris would wake enough to say to her, "Please don't leave me." Heidi would take one more picture of Chris, kiss him on the cheek, and leave. As soon as Heidi walks out of Chris's apartment and shuts the door, his fate is sealed. He is left alone on the floor with a different mixture of drugs in his system, and within minutes to an hour, Chris will overdose and suffocate. Chris is now deceased in his apartment alone. He will be found the next afternoon by his brother, John Farley. Chris will still be in the same position, place where he died. John would call 911. Chicago firefighters would receive and respond to the call just a little after 2 p.m. Chris was pronounced dead at the scene. The mixture that would kill Chris in the end was called a speedball, a mixture of cocaine and heroin. And weeks later, when the autopsy will come back, it will also say that Chris had a blocked artery as well. The autopsy will also reveal that Chris has an enlarged heart and his liver is in terrible condition. On December 23rd, 1997, Chris will have a funeral in his hometown in Madison, Wisconsin. He will have a service at Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church. Over 500 people will attend, many of his dearest and closest friends and his family. They will gather in the church to talk and remember the good times with Chris. Chris's old boss from Saturday Night Live will even be in attendance. In the end, when it's all said and done, Chris's remains will be put in a mausoleum close to where his family lives, and till this day, he still rests there. It's important to remember that Chris is just a person with feelings and fears, just like any other person here on earth, that dipped his hand one too many times in the pleasures of the world. But Chris is still loved and missed even more today than ever, and obviously will never be forgotten. Friends, until we talk again, long live Chris Farley.